Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Tonight, a trade war temporarily staved off as U.S. President Trump agrees to press pause on tariffs against Canada for 30 days. The CBC's Chris Ensing joins us now to talk about how this happened. Chris, where is this pause coming from?
Yeah, Katerina, the pause comes from a last-minute deal. So this centers on border security. President Trump saying that the tariffs are coming because of fentanyl crossing the border. He wants to see it stopped. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying today Canada is going to appoint a fentanyl czar to stop the drugs from crossing into the United States, that Canada will name Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations and provide 24/7 security at the border. That's in addition to the $1.3 billion Canada will spend on drones, helicopters, security equipment, and extra personnel at the border, all of it to appease the president concerned about border security that the Liberal government says is not a problem of magnitude, at least according to MP Eric Kuzmaricek for Windsor-Tecumseh.
And of course, we'll be there to make sure that we fight these tariffs, which, again, to be quite honest, are based on a fiction, are based on the flimsy argument that somehow there is fentanyl crossing the northern border. Less than 1% of fentanyl crossing into the United States comes from Canada. Less than 1% of illegal crossings that happen in the United States happen on the northern border.
The Prime Minister is looking at a negative response with regards to the tariffs, which we do support, but we need to be on the offense and be positive by creating economic opportunities. So there's interprovincial trade barriers, for example, but there's also shipping to Europe and other places. But all that comes after we start doing more domestic procurement for ourselves, which we can control today.
NDP MP Brian Massey pushing procurement, so saying Canada needs to spend taxpayer money on Canadian goods when the government is purchasing those. He says this attack on Canadians by our largest ally shows that we need to shore up our supply chain. I did speak very briefly with the Conservative MP in Essex, Chris Lewis, by phone today. He promised to get back to us. He did not. His leader, Pierre Poilievre, echoed the NDP calls to add troops on the Canadian-U.S. border in the form of border agents, and also to do whatever's possible to remove barriers from interprovincial trade.
And Chris, what have we been hearing from people here in Windsor about this whiplash over the last couple days?
Yeah, people are angry, they're frustrated. There's a lot of pride in all of it as well. And it's happening right here in Windsor, Essex, Chatham-Kent. We're on the front lines of all of this. Automotive workers, they told us that they feel betrayed by this tariff threat. And we know production lines on both sides of the border would shut down if they went into action, these 25% sweeping tariffs. Greenhouse growers, well, they say they were preparing for the worst. About 90% of what we grow out in Leamington and Kingsville is shipped to the United States. You can shut down a production line. You can't stop a cucumber from growing. Those costs would be, and if the tariffs come into effect, will be passed on to American consumers. So their life is going to get more expensive. And people around Windsor, they say they're speaking with their wallets.
I've always been concerned about where things come from. I always check that, but I've never necessarily felt like boycotting American products. So, whereas now I'm looking at cutting out as many American products from what I buy as possible.
Right now I'm just starting out with the basic steps of switching my beers, switching my breakfast from McDonald's to Tim's. Nothing too crazy right now, but just the easy changes I can make.
More Canadian brands rather than the American brands. It might be a bit more expensive, but just to support the country rather than let the person in charge over there dictate what we have to do.
So what's next? Trump does the 30-day pause. It doesn't mean the tariffs are off the table. Mexico also getting that pause as well. What keeps these tariffs from going in place at the start of March? Well, Trump says tariffs announced on Saturday will be paused for a 30-day period to see whether or not a final economic deal with Canada can be structured.
Thanks for this, Chris. CBC's Chris Ensing live in studio for us tonight. And in the midst of the still looming tariffs, the Windsor-Detroit tunnel bus is back on the chopping block. The mayor says he will veto council's decision to keep the bus running.
I have to do my part, and that's one of the things that I can do to say that I'm not supporting the action by the president against my city. And I refuse to subsidize economic development in Detroit that ultimately helps the country and the state and the city when we're under direct attack.
He adds the city will keep the license for the bus in case they want to bring it back down the road. Now, council could overturn this veto decision in the next couple weeks. The mayor says that ideally he'd like to look into taking the funding for the tunnel bus and putting it towards extending the school bus extras to the end of this year. There was also supposed to be a council discussion today about procurement options, but that was canceled for now in case of tariff relief, which did end up coming later in the day. Though Dilkin said that would not change his decision around the tunnel bus. And stay tuned, we're going to hear more from the mayor later in the program. Time now for a first look at your weather forecast. Another mild day before another drop in temperatures coming. Riley Lachuk gives us a recap.
Well, thanks, Kat. Yeah, kind of a bit of a misty, damp, gloomy day for most of us across the region today. Windsor getting to a high of 6 degrees through the afternoon hours. Chatham-Kent at 4. Around the shores of Lake Huron, 2 degrees. And Sarnia, I know we have seen a little bit of lake effect in that region, even some steadier snows. Here's some of that mist, some of that drizzle that's gone through the Windsor region through the day today. Tonight we fall to -5. We do have a risk of some freezing drizzle overnight tonight. -2 tomorrow, mix of sun and clouds. Kat, things change from there. I'll go into details when I come back.
Thanks for that, Riley. Let's turn now to my one-on-one conversation with Windsor's mayor. We spoke this morning before news of the 30-day delay on Trump's tariffs. Dilkins has said that a delay still leaves Windsor with lots of uncertainty. Here's his take if this all goes through.
Listen, it is bad. There's no way to sugarcoat this. This will have an immediate impact, and it will have a very deep impact in our community if these tariffs are kept in place for any period of time.
And we've heard the words catastrophic. What does that actually look like tangibly in our city?
Well, I think because we're an automotive city and because Detroit is an automotive city and our supply chains are so tightly integrated, that if you are a consumer looking to buy a car and today it's one price and tomorrow it's 25% more, you may just drive the old clunker for a little while longer before you buy a new car. You may park your money and just wait it out to see how long this lasts. If there is a decrease in demand, the automakers then respond accordingly. They lay people off and people end up being at home, and that has a ripple effect through the entire supply chain. And so at the end of the day, there's no way to make this sound good or look good. It is a catastrophic type tariff that has been put in place by the President of the United States. I'm just hopeful that sensible minds, that bright minds will prevail and prevail very quickly. The messaging of the Prime Minister and the Premier is that they're going to be there with supports. And so I know our community will require those supports, and I've said it could be analogous to the types of supports that were provided during COVID, just to help people get through. This can't last forever. It just can't last forever. It will decimate the auto industry, but not just the industry here, in the United States as well. No one wins in a trade war. There are casualties on all sides. And I think one of the best analogies that I've heard is this is similar to being or considered a circular firing squad where nobody wins.
What can you do as our mayor? What can you do here?
Listen, I want to give people hope. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you and say that, everything's going to be fine in the short term. This is going to be painful, but we're going to have to stick together. And so the Border Mayors Alliance that we've created is border city mayors like ours, like us, across the country who have communities who are tightly integrated on the other side of the border, who understand how the border works. And so we need to link arms together. We, as a Border Mayors Alliance, are all about Canada first. We now need to, regretfully, look at every single option that we have in front of us, small or large, to figure out what we can do. And if it doesn't move the needle independently, I think all cities doing the same thing can send a signal and have an impact. We're doing everything we can at the municipal level to make sure we're buying Canadian, that we're supporting people who live here, and that we're not feeding into a system that is designed to hurt Canadians.
Should Windsorites even be going across the border?
Well, listen, I think my grievance, our grievance is not against the American people. Our grievance, again, is against the decision of the President of the United States. The Americans that I know are good people. They want everything to be great for Canada. They want their lives to be great. I have relatives that live over there in Michigan. I have friends in the United States. We're not going to stop being friends. We're not going to stop seeing our family because of this. But I think it's really important that we all understand that what the President has done is bad for Canada, it's bad for Mexico, but fundamentally, it's bad for residents of the United States.
How is this for you emotionally, representing our city with all this?
I was asked the other day if I'm angry, about this. I'm not angry. That's not an emotion that's going to be helpful here. But I'm resolute to try and bring people together to say, you know what, we've got a good case. This makes no sense. Let's do all we can to bring people together to support the people in our community, have their backs, recognizing that some of our neighbors and our friends are, if this lasts for any period of time, going to go through a tough time themselves.
The threat of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods may be delayed, but the possibility still looms large. Today, Ontario's political parties unveiled a fresh round of policy aimed at addressing the threat. Sean Jeffords has more.
Doug Ford on his home turf in Etobicoke, surrounded by firefighters endorsing him. It all comes as Trump's tariff threats have been delayed for a month. But the PC leader was defending his decision to call a snap election as every party unveils policy to deal with the possible trade war.
You know, this gives us a strong 4-year mandate to outlive and outlast the Trump administration.
On the campaign trail, the parties unveiled similar strategies for helping businesses and workers. Trade diversification, financial relief, and tax breaks are all on the table no matter who wins the election.
PC party candidate Peter Bethlenfalvy says if the Tories are re-elected, they'll spend billions to provide targeted relief and defer some taxes, stressing that there would be significant help for the auto industry.
The measures I'm announcing today will provide urgent financial relief to help Ontario businesses weather the storm.
Bethlenfalvy acknowledged the measures are campaign promises at this point that will need to be passed if the party is re-elected. That's okay, according to this rep from the auto sector.
That I think the package here that we're discussing today is very formidable for Ontario-based manufacturers, and even if they have to wait a month for it, really a month is a really short time.
In Oshawa, NDP leader Marit Stiles also focused on helping the auto industry and stressed that her party will help find new trade partners for Ontario.
We will fight back as part of a strong Team Canada, and we will get to work building a tariff-proof Ontario for the years ahead.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie's plan focuses on a round of public infrastructure spending to stimulate the economy and low-interest loans to help keep businesses afloat.
The Fight Tariffs Fund, FTF, I like to call it the F Trump Fund, so that they can borrow at government rates to help them keep workers or hire new ones as they grow.
Green leader Mike Schreiner focused on the housing crisis at an event, but questioned why Ford called the vote at all because it delays any response to the tariff threat.
Doug Ford has abandoned his post as premier at a time when we need him the most to push back against Donald Trump's trade tariffs.
In a statement, Ford says the tariff delay gives time for cooler heads to prevail. Ontario is pausing retaliatory actions it had planned, but could put them back on the table if tariffs are imposed. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
In other news, big dollars for housing have been announced for our region. Dawson Chen reports.
The federal government is providing $17.5 million from its Housing Accelerator Fund to the municipalities of Lakeshore and Chatham-Kent. Windsor-Tecumseh MP Eric Kuzmarczyk announced the funding on Monday. The goal is to speed up construction of at least 500 homes between the two municipalities over the next 3 years.
This is about systemic change. This is about long-term change in the way we build housing so that we can get more affordable housing built more quickly, because we are a growing community. You can't have economic development, you can't have investment unless you have housing for workers and for young people in the community.
Chatham-Kent is receiving just over $10 million, while Lakeshore will get $7.4 million. Lakeshore's first application for the money wasn't successful, and its council voted against applying a second time. The issue was trepidation over the federal government's requirement allowing 4 units to be built on a property as a right. But in September, the municipality changed its mind and amended its zoning bylaw. Lakeshore Mayor Tracy Bailey believes her council just needed to explore the issue.
I think initially there may have been some fear amongst our residents and potentially council members as well. So we also had to do our homework and understand what high density means. Do we have any controls in place to help us and guide us to where we grow and how we grow? And I think we as a council, we as a community understand now that we have controls in place, and we certainly have planning mechanisms that allow us to choose where and choose how.
Kuzmerichik said Lakeshore and Chatham-Kent's successful applications mean they can both apply for further federal housing support through another government fund. Meanwhile, the City of Windsor hasn't received any dollars from the Housing Accelerator Fund. Windsor City Council has refused the 4-unit zoning bylaw amendment. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Welcome back. Donald Trump has given both Canada and Mexico a 30-day tariff reprieve. But Trump is turning his attention now to the European Union, threatening to hit the 27-state bloc with tariffs, saying that he could impose taxes on EU goods imported into the U.S. very soon. CBC's Crystal Gamansing reports from London.
European leaders are calling for unity in the face of potential tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump. It's important to remember that the EU acts as a single bloc when it comes to trade, but it's made up of 27 different nations. And today in Brussels, we've heard from a number of leaders. They were supposed to be meeting to talk about European defense, but the economy and how best to respond to the possibility of tariffs has become a center point of conversation. We have heard, for example, from the EU's foreign policy chief, who says that no one wants to be fighting an ally. However, a number of leaders are saying they don't appear to have any other choice but to come back with some sort of response against the U.S.
I think that we have to do everything to avoid this totally unnecessary and stupid tariff wars or trade wars.
We're a small open economy. We depend on trade. And it is our view that the Union has championed that and will continue to champion that. And Europe will work together on these issues and engage with the US in a constructive manner.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is also in Brussels, the first UK Prime Minister to attend one of these meetings since Brexit. He is in an interesting position because at this point, it doesn't appear that Donald Trump is focusing on potential tariffs against the UK, at least not right now. Maybe those will be delayed. He's focused on the EU at the moment. But even if those tariffs come into effect in the EU, it could have a knock-on effect, according to some economists.
If the EU imposes tariffs on the US as well, the implication for the EU economy will potentially be significant, with weaker growth and higher inflation. Being an important trading partner for the UK, that will have implication on the UK as well.
Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
An Ontario father says he is struggling to keep his teenage son away from drug dealers on Snapchat. Ithil Musa with our Go Public team looks at why some say the popular social media platform is ripe for drug trafficking.
It's an app known for its fun filters, but one Ontario parent warns Snapchat is also where illicit drugs are sold.
I'm trying to keep my son safe while these drug dealers are manipulating him, because they're reaching out.
We're not identifying Roger to protect his son's identity. He says his 15-year-old has been buying drugs on Snapchat, but tracking that has been difficult for one main reason.
Messages on Snapchat are deleted once they're viewed by the recipient. It's a unique feature of the app that makes it nearly impossible, say some parents, to monitor illegal activity.
Getting access to drugs on Snapchat isn't just a problem here in Canada. In the U.S., relatives of more than 60 young people who've overdosed on drugs allegedly purchased on the app have filed a lawsuit that claims Snapchat's role in illicit drug sales to teens was the foreseeable result of the designs, structures, and policies Snap chose to implement to increase its revenues.
I think that Snapchat's executives belong in prison.
Sam Chapman is one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. His 16-year-old son, Sammy, died in 2021 after overdosing on a pill he purchased on Snapchat. Chapman says his son didn't know it was fentanyl.
The dose that killed him was delivered to our front yard like a pizza after we were asleep, and we found Sammy dead on the floor.
Family Center. Snapchat says their parental control features allow parents to see who their child is talking to on the app and to report any concerns. The company also says it uses artificial intelligence to shut down the accounts of drug dealers. But this youth activist says it's not enough.
All of your messages and the photos you send, the stories you post, disappear after 24 hours. It creates this black box of social media where you don't have any record of what you sent.
And that has Roger in constant fear that his 15-year-old son will overdose.
I cried driving past a cemetery because I started thinking.
It is time now to look at your full weather forecast for the week. Here is Riley Lachuk.
Well, as I mentioned, things changing a little bit in our weather pattern, Katarina. Looking at our upper level winds, we've been kind of stuck in the edges of this ridge of high pressure. This is really cool temperatures back to the west with some extreme cold warnings for parts of the prairie provinces over the weekend. This does impact some of the U.S. Midwest, and yeah, you can see we are kind of right on the line of that right now, which has led to us being sort of on that line between the freezing temperatures and temperatures that are above freezing for Windsor into Chatham, Kent. But yes, you can see really that defined line between some of the colder temperatures, some of the mixing, and some of the wet snow that has fallen further to the north along the lakes. So yeah, a bit of a different weather story. You don't really even have to go that far to see some of the impacts of some of that colder air. As we advance into the day on Tuesday, we keep the cloud cover overnight. A risk that we could maybe see some freezing drizzle overnight into the early morning hours on Tuesday. Tuesday starts mainly cloudy with, some sunny breaks by the time we get into the morning hours. This particular model not doing a great job picking up some of the cloud cover through the overnight hours, but certainly with the winds, we can expect maybe some lake effect snow once again as we get into the morning hours for regions further north. Maybe we see some of that, a slight chance of maybe seeing a few snowflakes as we get through the afternoon hours. Tuesday into Wednesday, things do start to substantially change a little bit more. We'll start to introduce a little bit more cloud cover, and a bit more of a broader system pushes up from the U.S. that will kind of graze again southwestern Ontario as we get through the midweek into the later part of the week here by the time we get into, say, the Wednesday, Thursday timeframe. Winds will stay gusty as we get through the night tonight. Looking at gusts up to 40 through much of the region as we start the day tomorrow. Could even see the odd gusts up to 50 as we get through the morning hours. Tomorrow we'll start to see those backing off as we start to see those shifting around toward a more northerly flow by the time we get to the afternoon hours. That's going to maybe put a little of a bite in those temperatures as we get into the afternoon hours tomorrow. So we start at -4 tomorrow in Windsor, -5 in Chatham, Kent, and London, -6 in Sarnia for the morning. Warming up to a very seasonal -1 tomorrow. There's that risk of some freezing rain as we get through Thursday, Katarina, and then dipping back below freezing by the time we get to the weekend.
Thank you very much, Riley. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We are, of course, following the very latest on tariffs, so you can go there as the story continues to change. Tariffs on pause for now, but not off the table. Have a good night.